March Madness. March Madness is upon us, and we have a little bit of love. We're actually going to start with Alabama. Alabama, we're going to do some spotlights going into March Madness. We're going to have, hell, if you have one about the Leafs, throw it in the chat. We have to continue moving on with some of the March Madness stuff. So, but yeah, throw it in the chat so we can just have some more fun roasting the Toronto Maple Leafs. We're going to be doing these spotlights between now and the March Madness kicking off, especially before the Selection Sunday on March 12th. So we're going to try to break down some of the teams we think are going to get in and what their chances are and what we like about them, what we may not like about them. And we're going to start out with the Alabama Crimson Tide. Alabama, which was in a nail biter tonight, ended up winning in overtime, are a team that are projected to be probably a 1 seed, maybe a 2 seed, but mainly it looks like they're projected that 1 seed, and they're looking pretty good. Here's their resume from this point. At this point, 23 tournament appearances, 0 Final Fours, 0 championships, 24-23, and last year lost to Notre Dame in the first round, 78-64. So higher expectations this year. They're well coached, but they have a couple issues that are going to shoot them in the foot, I think, at some point, Scotty.
Yeah, I mean, what a game tonight. As we were on stream, back and forth affair with South Carolina, who, by the way, is trash, not good at all. Alabama pulls it out in overtime. Brandon Miller, they're all everything freshman, gets the game-winning bucket in overtime to win by 2. Showed some great killer instinct there, Chris. To get the W.
No.
Put up a nice 41 points in this game, Chris. Alabama scored 78. So, lot of shots fired from Miller, but he made them count. So,
just firing away from all over the court.
Yeah, and he wasn't shy. That's for sure. Obviously, Chris, the news this week, if you guys don't know, there was a whole incident in Alabama with that somewhat seemed to involve Brandon Miller. They're I mean, by far their best player. I mean, when you look at, overall, I mean, he went for 41 tonight, but just in general on the season, he is averaging almost 20 a game. He's their best player as a freshman. And he was involved in a little something where a friend maybe of his took a gun, and it's debated on who actually owned the gun. I've heard that Miller owned the gun, but I've also heard it was his friend Miles who owned the gun. But anyway, he was driving the car. He brought this gun to his buddy, and his buddy ended up using that or gave it to another guy, I think. It's confusing a little bit, to go ahead and kill a female young mother, a mother that was 23 years old. There was some sort of altercation and verbal dispute and argument that night that occurred. And I'm just shocked that he's able to play, Chris. I am shocked.
It's crazy.
The coach is so nonchalant about it. He's like, it's kind of like a wrong place, wrong time. No, it's not. Your buddy texted you to bring the gun to him. You bring it to him. That's not just a random wrong place, wrong time, Chris. You brought the gun when your buddy asked you to bring the gun to him. And the fact that he's still able to play, and quite frankly, like, there's so many Alabama fans out there that are like defending this decision, and like it's just kind of sad to see like how badly a team wants to win, right? And this is a new coach, done a great job. From everything we've seen, obviously they're in line. They're number 2 in the country in the AP poll. They're in line for a number 1 seed. But dude, this guy is literally, in my mind, an accessory to murder.
It's very
still able to play.
it's kind of crazy to think how crazy. I mean, we kind of saw this with we talked about New Mexico State last week with some crazy stuff that they ended up continuing on through playing, and then it took a hazing incident to get back into, you know, a situation where they had to cancel their season. But this is kind of a big deal, and I'm with you. It's kind of crazy to think that this is still a team that is able to get on the court knowing that there's murder investigations going on with a star player of this team. He's leading the team with 18.7 points per game and field goal percentage 45.9%, like leading the team. So this team, just, you know, some things I like about this team, taking that into account. If he's not able to, well, first of all, if he's not able to play because of all the things that are happening with this investigation, they take a big hit in the tournament. They're 14-1 conference, 24-4 overall, and I mean, there are some ways that they can win games, but without him, I think they take a massive hit. One big thing that they do well is the three ball. I think that's a way they can continue to climb. This is kind of one of those teams that needs to be hot at the right time. Bama leads the SEC with 284 made threes, and you know they hit double-digit threes in 13 of its games and are 13-0 in such games. So they are a very, very good sharp shooting team. They are very trigger happy when it comes to shooting the three ball, but that's also something that can take you down in the tournament as well. This is kind of one of those high risk, high reward situations where I think this Alabama team could get in trouble if the three ball isn't falling, and they rely on it quite a bit. So if everything is going well and they're peaking at the right time and they're not able to, let the three ball, destroy them over, some of these teams that could potentially defend them and have some good matchups against. We'll see what that looks like. If I'm looking at the tournament, when we're coming up here, when we start getting our brackets laid out, I'm looking at the road of Alabama and seeing who are the best defensive teams that defend the perimeter and what does that look like? Because I could see upset alert written all over this team if they rely too much on the three. So that's kind of where I see them either succeeding or failing moving forward in the tournament, taking away the whole legal shit that's going on.
Yeah. And listen, no one outside of Alabama is going to be cheering for this team moving forward. Like, they're going to be everyone, sometimes you get those neutral crowds in the March Madness. There will be no neutral. It will be anti-Alabama based off of what's gone on here. But you're right. Like, on paper with this, like, they're not only, they're great on both sides of the ball. They're top 20 in KenPom on both offense and defense, actually better defensively at the 5th in KenPom ratings as far as defensive metrics and 15th in offense. So they're a really, really great squad. It's just like prior to this last week, I'd have been like, hey, this is a great story. Alabama basketball, always been a little brother. Haven't had a lot of success, but now, nah, I want no part of them.
Emma's like, come on, man, with all the puns. It's sorry. It's just it just happened to tie in with the 3-point stuff. So it was just like, how could I not? But he parked the car and handed the dude a gun. South Carolina fans booed him every time he touched the ball. Like, love him. They will ban him, no doubt. If that's your gun, I have no doubt you're guilty. Like, it's just a bad situation, and it
doesn't seem like there's any push on Alabama's end to remove this guy from the court. Whether it's the coach, anybody involved with Alabama's, their president, whoever gets involved with that, the AD, anything like that. None of them are. There's just no pressure. So I do think he'll play. Unless something new comes to light, like, he'll play.
Yeah. So they can be, there's so many factors that go in, the distractions, the potential suspension, or whatever happens with this. But for a team that's number one in the SEC, there's just a lot of uncertainty. And when it comes to choosing your bracket, you better take that into account. And also knowing the fact that this team is very reliant on the three ball, and they're very good at doing that. You live by the three and you die by the three. So very, very interesting to see if there's going to be, certain teams in that side of the bracket that could potentially upset early on a top seed. Because that's what y'all look for, right? That's what's great about the first couple of days of the tournament is looking for those upsets. And there's a lot of stuff that can potentially derail this Alabama team. So keep that in mind. Only thing preventing the crowds from being 90% anti-Bama is the first 2 rounds in Birmingham. True. That's very true, Nathan, for sure. Durandum Rec Bama is great at sports. Yeah, it's true. It's true. They do what they can to get the best players, regardless of how it takes to get them. All costs. I just don't know if people would go to Bama basketball games. I mean, when there's hype, Bama's always traditionally a football school, but they've been competitive in college basketball for a little bit. So next up, North Carolina, which has honestly, they might find a way in, but this team is on the brink of potentially not getting into the tournament. They are on the bubble and they could potentially get in, but we wanted to do a highlight of a bubble team that we're trying to figure out what they could be. Keep in mind, this team lost to Kansas in the national championship last year and was a very successful team, but they're dealing with a little bit of stuff on their roster. There's drama with this team too that has kind of been back and forth, but 52 tournament pyramid. They're one of those teams that is just historic, right? 21 Final Fours, 6 national championships, 131-49 overall in their tournament record. So they're always going to be kind of in the conversation, but this year could be different. Scotty, do you think they get in, first of all, and second of all, strengths and weaknesses for UNC?
This is just a fascinating story. You talked about they lose the national championship. Now, yeah, I think they were an 8 seed in the tournament last year, so they didn't have a great regular season. Got hot in the tournament. Really, well, what were they up at half? I'm trying to remember. It was certainly double digits, 14, something like that, 16 against Kansas at half. Lose the national championship. They start out preseason number 1 this year.
Number 1.
So it's not like, oh yeah, they were in the national championship last year, but they just didn't bring anybody back. No, they were the number 1 team in the country in the polls to start the season. And now, as of the last bracketology that Joe Lunardi put out on ESPN, they are the first team out. They're the first team out of the tournament. They're not even in the plans. Now, obviously, they're right there, so could that change? They got a win tonight, although not impressive, against a bad Notre Dame team in a close battle. What do they do? Well, listen, Armando Beckett, who was the rave of the tournament last year, has played really, really well for him this year. I don't think he's played to his potential. He's averaging a double-double, 17 and 11. He's been really nice. Caleb Love, who was their marksman, their three-point shooter, their dude on the outside, their guard that can get points. He's averaging 17 in a game, Chris, on 38% from the field. Like the dude, and 31% from 3. He's lost it. I don't know if he's just not getting as good of looks or like what's going on there. They haven't been great in close game situations. When Roy Williams was their coach, Chris, they were a transition fast break team. They've played fast. They got easy buckets. They don't get out in transition anymore. They're not that team anymore. I think against Duke the other week when they lost, the transition points were like 20-2 in that game. And that's why they lost that game. They have to, slow it down, get in a half court offense. They're not appreciably good on either side of the ball, Chris. They're pretty mid on offense and defense. Like, they don't excel on either side of the ball. Beyond those two, there's not a lot to love against. Like, RJ Davis is all right, but there's just not a ton of guys to like. Leaky Black has kind of been the same guy. Like, it just seems like they haven't progressed at all, and in fact regressed for whatever reason. They have, some interesting down the stretch. It'll be super interesting to see. They have Duke again. I think they have Virginia coming up, and in 2 of their last 3. So that can either help or hurt them a ton. Both those are at home, but you got to win one of those 2 against Duke or Virginia, or make a huge run in the ACC tournament, or you're going to be at home as the preseason number 1 team. I don't think I've ever seen that, Chris. Have you ever seen like a preseason number 1 not even make the tournament?
No, it's not. It's unprecedented, and I don't think it's ever really happened. So the fact that they're in this situation is kind of crazy to me. To see, remember my underdog UConn pick? They are really good. Yeah, Milwaukee's totally. We'll maybe talk about them next time for sure. But UNC, there's also this drama too. I don't know if you heard this drama with like the Caleb Love and RJ Davis. Did you hear some of this? Which now they're saying it's total cap. It's all fake and this and that. But where there's smoke, there's fire, right? And when this. I'll get to the allegations. Well, not allegations. It's not that serious, but I'll get to the rumors here in a minute. But since these rumors came out, they lost 2 straight to Miami and NC State, which were both ranked teams. So they're both good teams. So, it is what it is. And we know that UNC isn't what they were last year based off of what they're playing. But there was RJ Davis and Caleb Love were rumored to be kind of having a love triangle with another UNC girlfriend, and she plays for the UNC team on the women's side, and now they're saying it's all fake and this and that, and then they're all besties and they're all good, but it's like, I mean, didn't come out of nowhere. Where there's smoke, there's fire, but now it's weird. But long story short, it's a distraction, and now it's kind of like part of the whole story of what's happening lately, and maybe this team isn't as cohesive, and maybe there's some things that are like not exactly what they seem on this team, and maybe that's part of the foundation of this team getting along and being one unit. And I don't know, I think there could be some
there's clearly multiple units involved here.
there's clearly so but they're not particularly blowing people away on offense, on defense, on anywhere, but yet they still kind of find themselves on the brink. And I just think that it's going to be really, really tough for them to make any moves to represent in the tournament. Now, could they potentially win a first round game if they get in? Maybe, but I just don't have high expectations for them. Simply put.
No. It's hard to have high expectations when you're borderline making the tournament.
Yeah. So, all right. So last team. Let's go ahead. Let's move on. My Gonzaga Bulldogs. Let's get them out of the way. Now, obviously, I'm a big Gonzaga fan. My wife went there, so process of being a part of the family and coming into a team that's more competitive than any college sports team that I ever could follow from my own colleges. I'm taking the Zags, and of course, I've been a big. Emma's always here for the gossip. Yes, see, Emma, we really try to mix in good drama and storylines and juicy stuff so that we keep like the drama. Like we have to have some of that. A good sports show does not, water down all of the good, juicy details of all the interesting things happening in sports. So there's that. Gonzaga. This is not a team that is going to have high expectations, and it's different because every year they always do have high expectations. This is a little bit different. It's on the other end of the spectrum where it's like there's as a Zags fan and seeing what they've been able to do, they haven't lived up to the same expectations, and this isn't as good of a team as they were in recent years. You lost Chet. You lost a couple other dudes on this starting lineup to the NBA. So every year they've been pumping out guys that they've lost. They've lost some players here and there over the course of the last 2 or 3 seasons. But they still have Drew Timmy here. They've had 24 appearances, 2 Final Fours, no championships to show for it, and lost to Arkansas in the regional semifinal last year. So with that being said, Gonzaga has the ability to potentially make it to maybe a couple rounds, maybe. But the problem with them is I haven't felt good about their consistency from the guard play and missing shots and digging themselves holes in games to bad teams. They've had in the WCC some rough games against some bad teams that shouldn't have even come down to the wire. And they've done that against San Francisco. They did it against, who was it? The Loyola Marymount dug themselves a hole there.
These are juggernaut teams.
These are juggernaut teams, and they've been barely getting out. I just feel like Gonzaga has not felt as strong. Now you look back and they have wins against Kentucky. They've got wins against a couple Alabama. We just talked about Alabama. They have some wins against some ranked teams, but they've lost to St. Mary's, number 18 in the same conference. They've lost to Baylor. They've lost to Texas, number 11. So when it comes to the heavy hitting teams, I'm worried, and they're struggling against some of the other teams. I mean, they're second in points per game in the nation, but look at their rebounds. Rebounds per game, 119th in the country. That's not something that you want to go into a March Madness tournament and not being able to rebound against some of the best rebounding teams. And that's where you lose games. If you can't get the boards on, offensively or defensively, that's a problem. 33rd in the league, in the country in assists per game, and they're giving up 74. They're not playing the same defense that they typically play. But, this team strikes me as what they kind of, they are. They have one guy on this team, Drew Timmy, that's reliable, and the rest of the guard play hasn't been up to the standards of what it has been in previous years. So that being said, I don't think that this team is going to make any miraculous runs to the Final Four by any means. I think that this team is probably maybe 1 or 2 wins into the tournament, and they get bounced. And I could potentially see them being a first round upset.
Yeah, this is the worst Gonzaga team in probably at least 4 or 5 years. And that's not to say they're bad, obviously.
They're 23-5.
Yeah, well, yes, with a conference that's, and this is, right now they're second in conference play. They're behind St. Mary's. So this could be the first time they don't win the conference regular season title in
forever.
It feels like almost forever. Chris, they don't play defense, which is kind of their story a lot of times. They're a great offensive team. The last few years, they've been better defensively. This year, they're back to they're not a good defensive team.
Well, Chet helped with that last year.
For sure. And I don't know what sort of exemption Drew Timmy was able to receive in order to be allowed to play 10 years of college basketball.
Yeah.
How that, I don't went through the loophole or whatever. It's just shocking to me that he's still allowed to play. I feel like they're breaking rules there, Chris. Now the dude has been balling out recently, Chris.
Yeah.
Is Julian Strother. Where does this guy come from? He's had some nice games, but the last 3, 28, 28, and 26.
He's been...
You're saying the guards are inconsistent, but that dude has been balling as a wing for them.
Early on in the season was not consistent. He's gotten better over the course of the last 2 or 3 for sure.
But his stats on the year are he's 15 points per game. He's shooting 43% from 3, 49% from the field. Those are all nice numbers. Now, beyond that, they just haven't got the contribution. This is just not a team like you'd expect from Gonzaga in recent years. They're just not that team. Maybe without the pressure, that'll help them in the tournament a little bit. Maybe
it's true.
Go in as right now they're probably like a 4-ish, maybe. Right now I feel like a 4 seed, maybe 5 depending, but how they finish up here. and then they have the pressure off a little bit, and they play a little better in the tournament. Obviously, huge disappointment in the tourney last year. Haven't quite get over the. Was it 2 years ago that they were in the national title game, right? So they've been close a couple times. This team doesn't feel like they have it, what it takes, but maybe they'll make at least a fun run, and it'll be a little more of like a Cinderella run for them, like they used to have in the back in the days. Now, clearly, they're way less of a Cinderella when this team is ranked, in the top 15 in the country for a reason. But they can't afford, with the defense they play, they just can't afford to miss shots, Chris. They're totally reliant on making shots, and if you have one bad day, you're out because you're not good enough defensively. You can't lock down defensively.
Yeah.
Or rebound, which you talked about.
Yeah. I mean, that's been a strength of theirs even going back, Chet Holmgren, right? Size. You had Sabonis there who had size, rebounding, could do a little bit of facilitating. Like, they've had some dudes that have been able to fit that mold, and I just don't feel, Drew Timmy's good, but he can't do it all on his own. And I just think that, this team is they have some challenges to get over. And I think they're maybe a recruiting class or two away from getting back, to like a really feeling good team. But maybe I hope you're right. I hope it's a point where it's like, all right, well, they always have the high expectations and always underachieve. Maybe they have low expectations and overachieve this year round. So maybe that's the case, and I'm just really wrong on this team. But I'm hoping maybe they have a little bit of getting hot at the right moment kind of vibe to them, and they can pull it out. But we'll see. So there you go. Hell, fail on Gonzaga. Marquette, baby. Who's next? Duke? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, we're gonna get all the blue bloods. Let's go.
Too many blue bloods in this preview who have zero chance. Well, to be fair, we didn't cover one blue blood that has a pretty damn good chance.
Yes. So, guys, Final Four in Houston is off and running. Guys, we have a couple announcements, I think, coming down the pipeline, potentially with, some fun things for the tournament that we have brewing on the back end. So we will go ahead and announce those when we get a little closer, have more details, but could be fun. Could be a lot of fun. And we are going to be doing a breakdown of 2 or 3 teams, 3 or 4 teams per stream from here on out, outside of tomorrow's NBA stream. So keep tuned. And we are going to be doing a March Madness bracket as well for all of you guys. We're going to be doing some prizes for that. And then we are going to continue to, again, try to reveal. Last year we did a big Sunday selection reveal, and it was I thought kind of fun. It was pretty successful for us. We did it all live, and we kind of put together our spreadsheets and everything else and broke down instantly. I think maybe we could try to do that